In the depths of prehistory, long before the first words were spoken, before fire was mastered or stone was shaped into tools, there existed a fragile creature standing at the edge of survival. Early humans, weak compared to predators, slow compared to beasts, vulnerable against the harshness of nature, yet somehow they endured. They survived in silence, without the comfort of language, without the sharpness of tools. But how? That question is far stranger, far more mysterious than it first appears. Because if survival is about strength, they should have vanished. If survival is about speed, they never stood a chance. And yet, they are the reason you and I exist today. But what secret allowed them to endure in a world where almost everything was stronger, faster, and more dangerous? Was it instinct or something deeper? Did they carry a hidden code within their very biology, an advantage no predator could match? This is not the story you think you know. There are details buried in the shadows of time that will leave you stunned. One critical answer lies in how they moved together, but I won't reveal that just yet. Another clue is hidden in the way they sensed danger long before it struck. And yes, we'll uncover that soon. Stay with me, because the survival of early humans without words, without weapons, and without tools is one of the greatest untold stories in human history. In the earliest chapters of human existence, there was no speech to break the silence, no sharp stone to cut through flesh, no fire to warm the night, only bodies of fragile skin, bones still learning to adapt, and minds teetering on the edge of awakening. To picture those first humans, you must strip away every invention, every convenience, every word. What remains is a creature surrounded by towering predators, the saber-toothed cat lurking in tall grass, the giant hyena circling the edges of darkness, the eagle-like raptors scanning from above. And yet, this voiceless being stood among them, alive. But how does one survive without language, without tools? Let me hold that answer for just a moment, because first, you must feel the world as they felt it. The nights were mercilessly long, the cries of beasts echoing in the blackness, the cold gnawing into the marrow. The days brought little comfort, scorching suns, sudden storms, and endless hunger. Food was not hunted in grand strategy, but stumbled upon in chance encounters. Berries plucked with uncertain fingers, roots clawed from soil, scraps stolen from carcasses left by lions. And still, they endured. You might wonder, did they communicate at all? Perhaps with grunts, gestures, stares that carried weight beyond words. Perhaps with rhythms of footsteps, the subtle shift of a shoulder, the widening of eyes at the scent of danger. But here's the secret I won't fully unravel yet. Even without words, they spoke in a language older than speech, one written not in sounds but in silence, in movement, in presence. Survival depended not on hunting, not yet on tools, but on an invisible bond, a connection strong enough to tie fragile bodies into something more powerful than claws or fangs. I will reveal the true nature of that bond later, but let's stay here, in their world of silence. Without language, trust was a delicate thread, woven not with promises, but with instincts. Did one follow the group or wander alone? Did one share a piece of found fruit or hoard it? These small choices decided who lived and who vanished. The environment pressed them constantly. Rivers flooded without warning. Plains erupted with fire. Skies unleashed storms that stripped away entire shelters of branches and leaves. Every mistake cost lives, and yet every survival carved knowledge into the minds of the next generation. Still, what amazes most is not just that they survived, but that they thrived enough to continue. And there is something you haven't considered yet. The predators were not their only enemies. Hunger and disease lurked in every shadow. Bones cracked from falls, wounds festered without medicine, and the weak often perished in silence. So why didn't the story end there? Why didn't the last fragile human vanish beneath the paw of a lion or the hunger of a vulture? I will tell you why, but not just yet. For now, hold on to this truth. Their survival was not a miracle, not an accident. It was the beginning of something we are only starting to understand. And as we journey deeper, you will discover the hidden code that allowed them to face the impossible and still remain standing. Stay tuned, because the secret that kept them alive in this silent world is far more astonishing than you could ever expect. In that ancient silence, every step early humans took was haunted by the shadow of predators, creatures whose senses were sharper, whose bodies were stronger, whose fangs and claws could tear through flesh in seconds. To survive without weapons was not just dangerous, it was unthinkable. Yet, they did. Picture the vast grasslands where tall blades swayed, hiding lions with golden eyes fixed on the weak. Picture dense forests where leopards melted into branches, waiting to drop with sudden death. Even the rivers betrayed them, with crocodiles that could lunge from beneath murky waters faster than thought itself. And then there were the packs. Wolves with relentless hunger, hyenas with crushing jaws. Against these forces, the human body was nothing. No claws, no fangs, no armored skin. So why weren't they wiped out? That is the riddle. Let me not answer it completely yet, because the key lies not in strength, but in perception. Early humans were forced to develop a kind of awareness beyond ordinary senses, a vigilance so sharp it bordered on supernatural. Their eyes learned to read the twitch of grass that meant a hidden predator. Their ears caught the faintest crack of a twig long before an ambush. Their noses detected the iron scent of blood in the air, warning of predators nearby. This was not mere instinct. It was survival shaped into art. And here lies a clue. While predators relied on speed and power, early humans relied on foresight. They could not fight, but they could avoid. They could not overpower, but they could outlast. I will reveal something astonishing. Scientists today call it persistence hunting, the ability of humans to chase prey, not with speed, but with endurance, running until the animal collapses from exhaustion. But wait, we are not there yet. Before tools, before strategy, there was only a fragile creature learning to read the land as if every sound, every shadow was a sentence in a book of survival. Think of it like this. The silence that predators used as a weapon, humans turned into their greatest teacher. And here's another twist. Predators, though stronger, were predictable. Lions hunted in bursts, leopards struck from trees, crocodiles lurked at riverbanks. But humans began to anticipate patterns. They knew when to avoid a watering hole, when to climb high ground, when to stay in groups, and when to scatter. This knowledge passed not through words, but through action, through silent observation of elders, through imitation. One generation after another sharpened this invisible wisdom until survival became a memory etched into blood. Still, you must wonder, how could a creature with no tools dare to face such a world? The truth is, they did not fight the predator directly. They learned instead to follow from the shadows, scavenging remains, taking scraps from the jaws of beasts once the danger had passed. Yes, survival began not with hunting, but with patience. And this patience would one day turn into dominance, though not yet. For now, what you must hold on to is this. In the predator's shadow, early humans discovered that survival was not about being the strongest, but about being the most watchful, the most adaptable, the most enduring. The full revelation of how this transformed them into masters of the world. That comes later. Stay with me, because the turning point is closer than you think. Long before words shaped the human story, there was another kind of language, a silent code that flowed through every gesture, every look, every breath shared among the first humans. To survive without tools was one challenge, but to survive without spoken language, that demanded something extraordinary. Think for a moment. When danger came in the form of a lion's growl in the distance, or the sudden silence of birds overhead, how could one fragile human warn the others without words? The answer was born from instinct. A raised hand freezing midair, a sudden stiffening of the shoulders, eyes widening toward the horizon. These were not mere movements. They were signals. Over time, they became a vocabulary of survival. But here is the fascinating part I won't fully disclose yet. This silent language was not just about gestures. It was about rhythm, timing, and even the absence of movement itself. To stand completely still was as much a signal as to run. To remain silent was sometimes louder than a scream. This was a language older than speech, one that united the group against predators and hunger. And yet, there was something deeper, almost mystical, that tied them together. Scientists today call it emotional contagion, the unspoken transfer of fear, excitement, or caution from one body to another. If one human felt terror, the rest felt it instantly, as if fear itself leapt from mind to mind. This invisible bond gave them an advantage that no claw or fang could match: unity. But I must keep you waiting before I reveal how unity became their greatest weapon. For now, picture a small group huddled together at night, the stars watching overhead, every rustle in the darkness sending waves of silent communication through the circle. One shifted slightly, the others followed. One sensed danger, the others moved without hesitation. No one needed to speak. No one needed a plan. The bond itself was enough. And here is where the story takes a surprising turn. That hidden language was not limited to survival. It became the seed of cooperation, the first step toward society. Sharing food, guarding children, deciding when to travel. All of it required communication, and somehow they managed it without words. Can you see how astonishing that is? A world without speech, yet filled with meaning. A silence that did not divide, but united. This is the secret foundation of humanity, and it remained long after language was born. But how did this silent language evolve into something greater? That, I promise, is a revelation I will unveil in the next part. For now, remember this: words are powerful, yes, but even without them, our ancestors discovered a way to speak, a way to connect, and a way to survive against all odds. Stay tuned, because what happens next changes everything. Survival without tools and language was already a miracle, but the real turning point in humanity's story came not through strength, but through endurance. Unlike predators who lunged with explosive speed, early humans mastered something else entirely: persistence. Their bodies, though fragile, carried a secret design. Sweating through the skin instead of panting like dogs, standing tall to expose less surface to the burning sun, and breathing in rhythm with steady strides. These traits allowed humans to do what no beast could: run, not in bursts, but for hours, even days. This was the birth of persistence hunting, where humans chased prey slowly, tirelessly, until exhaustion collapsed the animal in its tracks. But here is the twist. Before they perfected this, they were scavengers, trailing the kill of lions, waiting for hyenas to feast, then stealing whatever scraps remained. To rise from scavenger to hunter demanded patience, courage, and one secret element that changed everything: fire. Yet I will not unveil the full story of fire just yet, because first you must understand endurance itself. Imagine the prey: an antelope sprinting, a zebra charging across plains, its speed unmatched, but its body overheating with every burst. Behind it, slow but relentless, the humans followed. Step after step, hour after hour, the prey's advantage dissolved. What predator could do such a thing? None. Only humans. This endurance was their invisible spear, their silent weapon long before stone blades, but endurance alone could not defend them from the night. For in the darkness, predators ruled, and humans remained prey. That is where the discovery of fire enters, the most mysterious and transformative chapter of all. Was it lightning striking a tree? Was it lava spilling from the earth? However it began, early humans learned to capture flames, to keep them alive, to guard them through the night. Fire was warmth, fire was safety, fire was light pushing back the abyss. And here is something astonishing I will reveal fully later. Fire was also the first tool that shaped the human brain. Around fire, humans gathered, their silent language growing more complex, their bonds deepening. Fire turned the night from terror into sanctuary, predators retreating at its edge, children sleeping without fear. It cooked food, unlocking hidden energy, fueling the brain that would one day imagine tools, art, and words. But we are not there yet. For now, hold on to this. Endurance gave humans the hunt. Fire gave them the night, and together, these forces shifted the balance of power. The hunted were becoming hunters. The weak were learning strength. Still, one question remains. What happened when endurance, fire, and silent communication fused into something greater than survival? That revelation is what truly explains why humans, and not any other creature, inherited the earth. And that story is waiting in the next chapter. Stay with me, because the climax is near. The silence of early humanity could not last forever, though for countless generations it seemed as if it might stretch on without end. For millennia, they lived without weapons sharp enough to strike fear into predators, without the fire of language to bind their thoughts. And yet something was stirring. Something small, fragile, and invisible, but powerful enough to change the fate of the world. This was the dawn before words, a time when thought began to separate itself from instinct, when survival no longer depended only on reflex, but on the first flickers of imagination. Picture a circle of figures gathered around a flame, the night pressing against their backs, predators pacing at the edge of the light. They are silent, yes, but silence is no longer empty. It is filled with meaning. A glance across the fire signals warning. A shift in posture tells of hunger. A hand motion points toward distant prey. These are not words, not yet, but they are more than instinct. They are the first steps toward abstraction, the vague beginnings of a language that did not need sound. Here lies the secret. Before humanity spoke, humanity understood. And understanding, even without speech, was enough to tip the balance of survival. But I will not reveal everything at once because the mystery of this dawn is deeper than you think. For now, know this. Memory began to grow heavier, where once a human might see only the immediate, the lion in the grass, the fruit on the branch. Now they began to remember what had happened yesterday, and perhaps even anticipate what might come tomorrow. This was the spark that transformed them, the seed of foresight. And with foresight came planning. Suddenly, a group could prepare for a hunt before the chase even began. Suddenly, a path through the forest was not just traveled, but mapped in the mind. But how did they share this knowledge without words? That is the riddle that holds us still. The answer lies in rhythm and sound. Perhaps a grunt repeated twice meant food. Perhaps a cry pitched higher meant danger. Perhaps a low hum in the throat soothed a child at night. And in that hum was born the earliest seed of music. We cannot know exactly, but what we do know is this. The brain of these silent humans was growing, fed by the energy of cooked meat, shaped by the challenge of survival, sharpened by the demands of cooperation. And the larger the brain grew, the more connections it wove, until silence itself could no longer contain all that needed to be expressed. Yet still, this was not language. This was proto-language, a liminal space between silence and speech, where gestures, sounds, and shared emotions created a hidden code. You might think this is a small step, but in truth, it was monumental, because once humans could symbolize, attach meaning to sound, connect gesture to idea, they had crossed a threshold no other creature could follow. This was not about survival alone anymore. This was about identity. This was about culture. Around the fire, a story could now be told without words, through hands painting shapes in ash, through bodies reenacting a hunt, through voices rising in unison to mimic the cries of predators. And in these performances, memory became tradition. For the first time, knowledge did not die with the body, but passed from one generation to the next. That was the true revolution. But wait, there is a twist you must hear. Even in this dawn, silence remained more powerful than speech. A group that froze together in utter quiet could evade a predator more effectively than a group that shouted warnings. A shared look still carried more urgency than a string of syllables. Words were not yet dominant, but their shadow was growing. Soon, the grunt would become a sound with consistent meaning. The cry would become a call. And one day, long after, words would be born, carrying with them the destiny of civilization. But we are not there yet, not in this chapter. Here we remain in that breathtaking threshold, that fragile dawn where silence still ruled, but imagination had begun to break it apart. Let us linger here, because this moment is easy to overlook, yet it is perhaps the most important in human history. Without this stage, the stage where humans learned to communicate before a language, they could never have survived long enough to invent words, never built trust strong enough to live in groups large enough for societies, never laid the foundations of culture that would one day create art, religion, and philosophy. In this twilight before speech, everything we call human was gestating, unseen, unspoken. It is tempting to ask, who was the first to truly speak? Who was the first to name fire, or sky, or water? The truth is, There was no first. Language was not invented in a day, but emerged like the sunrise, slow, inevitable, and unstoppable. 1,000 generations lived and died in this dawn, each adding a fragment, each passing on a gesture, a sound, a rhythm, until at last silence gave way to the first true words. But remember, the miracle is not that they created language. The miracle is that they survived without it long enough to give birth to it. And here lies the greatest revelation of all. In surviving the age before words, humans proved that unity does not require speech, intelligence does not require language, and survival itself does not always require weapons. The dawn before words is not just a story of silence. It is the story of how silence carried the seed of everything to come. And that seed is the reason you and I can speak of it now. Stay with me, because what this means for us today will be revealed in the final conclusion, and I promise that revelation will change the way you see yourself and every word you speak forever.